Bracha from Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. With the help of Hashem, we continue our joint study of the ethics of the fathers of Pirkei Avot. The numbering system in this chapter is a bit complicated. Please look for the Mishnah that begins with the words אמרו שלושה דברים. In the text that I'm using, it's chapter 2, Mishnah 15. We're studying about the teachings of the students of Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. We spent a considerable amount of time analyzing the responses of these great students to their teachers, their rebbes, their ravs' questions. Each one was, of course, one of the great luminaries of our nation. And after responding to the guided question of their great teacher, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the Mishnah now records for us their independent teachings. Each one of these five taught us several matters of great significance in areas of perfection, of levels of musar, derech eretz, and midot. The Mishnah begins by saying, Heim amiru shlosha devarim. They taught three special teachings. Each one had three special teachings. Of course, they had numerous teachings, they had many, many teachings. However, if you've ever been privileged to study carefully under the tutelage of any great teacher, or any great Rav, of any great Rebbetzin, there are certain teachings that it doesn't even matter what you're studying. Those teachings are always reflected because they are variations on the very same theme. Heim amru shlosha devarim. Of course, the Rav already, in other kinds of Rabbeinu Ovadia, Bar Tadura points out that unquestionably they taught hundreds of teachings, not three teachings. But these perhaps were their favorite teachings. Or these were the teachings that they emphasized over and over. If you've been privileged to be close to a Rav, to a rabbi, so he teaches many, many things. But there are certain teachings which are basic, which are core teachings, essential teachings, which are the most all-encompassing teachings. And I think that's the three that we're trying to look for in each of the great disciples of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Rabbi Eliezer teaches, Yihi chivod chaverecha chaviv alecha kishelach ve'al tehi noach lichos. Let the honor of your friend make sure that your friend's dignity, that your colleague's honor should be as important to you, as precious to you. Be as sensitive to it as you are to your own honor. Be careful with the honor of your colleague. And then he adds a teaching which, on the surface, it's a nice teaching. It's difficult to follow the flow between one and the other. Va'al tehi noach lichos. And don't be quick to get angry. Be careful, even if you're getting angry. I don't know. So I can see someone say, "Well, here's legitimization for getting angry." Just says, don't be in a hurry to get angry, but eventually maybe it's okay. Al tehi noach lichos. Don't get angry easily. It means maybe it has to be a very major event that should cause you anger. Is there a connection between teaching 1 and teaching 2? Other commentaries, of course, suggest that there is. The Rav, for instance, I think he's the classical commentary on Mishnah. He teaches that the way to successfully protect the dignity and the honor of your friend is by carefully seeing to it not to get angry. As he writes, Imatan noach lichos, because if you're quick to get angry, efshar then surely inevitably you will belittle the honor and the esteem of your friend. Because in a state of anger, that's what happens. Or the author of one of the other great commentaries on the Mishnah, the Pirkei Avot says, is a bit of a different reading. He says if you want to get to the level of avoiding anger, let's say that's your goal. Al tihi noach l'chos. You know a good way to avoid anger? See to it that you keep your friend in especially high esteem. Mishum d'chol kas, says the author of Tiferet Yisrael. Mishum d'chol kas balarov al yidei shepaga ehad d'chvod chavero ma'at. Because someone did something to belittle the honor of his colleague. Unfortunately, they acted in a certain way which degraded the other individual, or they said something which unfortunately put him down, and the response is quick to happen. And of course, no person just stands there and lets herself be belittled. And this is the beginning of rage. This is the beginning of fights, the beginning of chaos. Therefore, if you want to reach the level of control over anger, so maybe one of haser chaos milibecha, v'haver ra'a mipsarecha. One of the ways to avoid anger is if you show constantly certain levels of dignity and sensitivity to your friend. Now, there are people, it's quite easy for them sometimes, if the person that you're telling me to show honor to, or to be sensitive to their honor, is more learned than I am. He's older than me, he's more experienced than me. So for many people, that's relatively easy. But the difficulty is when it's chavercha. Yihi chevod chavercha, says the Mishnah, says Rabbi Eliezer. Yihi chevod chavercha, your friend's honor. That's a little bit more difficult. The Gemara teaches in several places, amongst them in Masechet Bava Metzia. If you're interested, you can look it up. It's on page 33a. Is that there were certain groups of Talmidei Chachamim. I understand that the concept of chaver is not limited merely to great rabbis and their colleagues, but I would like to choose 2 or 3 examples from the world of the rabbis where we see great honor, sensitivity of honor, not merely to their rabbanim, not merely to their morim, but to their colleagues, to their friends. And the Gemara teaches in one place that in certain communities, the Talmidei Chachamim omidim zeh mipenei zeh. When a colleague would enter, not when the rabbi would enter, when a colleague, they're learning together in the same shiur, we're learning together in the same yeshiva, or we're both fellow rabbis, or fellow teachers, or fellow students, because they're sensitive to the kavod of chaver, so they would stand up for each other. Omidim zeh mipnei zeh. I had the privilege. I remember when I was in yeshiva, Torah V'Dat. Anyone who knows anything about the yeshiva, one of the most outstanding rabbanim there. Eventually, he was one of the Rashi Yeshiva in Torah V'Dat. His name was Rav Pam Zatzal. I saw in the Beit Midrash, it was a scene to behold the behavior levels of Rabbi Pam. And even if you weren't on the level to understand all of the teachings, it was worth being in the Beit Midrash just to watch. It was like a living example of how a person is supposed to behave. I believe I told the story. I don't know if I told it on YouTube, but I surely told it in other forums. I was once sitting in the middle of the Beit Midrash, upstairs in Torah V'Dat, and the size of the Beit Midrash was at least twice as big as the area we're sitting in, at least twice as big. And I was sitting in the middle of the Beit Midrash. That is significant. That is significant because of the nature of the story. And in addition to his teaching, in addition to his shiurim and his Pirkei Halacha and Hadracha, often in the afternoon, people would come in to consult with Rav Pam, maybe ask him for brachot or hadrachot. You know, he was a Kohen also. He was a great Torah scholar. I remember there was once a man who came in the middle of the afternoon, and I hope it's okay to speak this way, if maybe it's not considered the highest level of proper speech, but I in order to tell the story, I have to tell it in the way it happened. There are certain people. Everyone should have perfect control over their salivary glands, but there is a certain condition where when a person starts speaking, so often spittle, often spit, often various forms of saliva comes out of that person's mouth. I'm sure you're familiar with the phenomenon. May God protect all people from any form of difficulty or stress, and may all the people suffering this particular problem may be solved immediately this evening, together with all the other issues. I was sitting in the middle of the Beit Midrash, and this man came, this relatively elderly man came to talk to Rabbi Pam. And he was standing right next to the rabbi, and he was literally spitting in his face. As he spoke the words, I was able to see, that's why I said it's important to see where I was sitting. I was able to see the spit, straight on Rav Pam's face. And it was such a great lesson. I went home that day knowing much more than I knew in the morning. Because everyone else that I know in this world, I think, or surely the overwhelming majority of people that I know in this world, the way that they would react is one of two ways. And that is either they would take out some kind of tissue or handkerchief, wipe away the spit on their face, because it's just natural. Nobody that I know walks around with spit of other people on their face. Or they would move away. They would distance themselves from the person speaking. Yehi chavod chaver.
Or do both.
I'm sorry, or do both. Right, that's right. Yehi chavod chavercha chaviv alecha kishalach. Rav Pam taught us, without even having to say the words. You can't do that to someone else. You know how the person will feel, and it's not the person's fault. So he stood there. Didn't flinch. It had a deep impression upon me. And in terms of showing honor to fellow rabbis or to fellow colleagues, I saw in the Beit Midrash, I saw in the study hall of Yeshiva Torah that, especially downstairs, which was the large Beit Midrash. Rav Pam was sitting there, and on many, I'm not exaggerating, many occasions a day, you would see him stand up. Somebody would walk into the Beit Midrash. So maybe you thought the head rabbi of the generation is walking in, and you turn around and it's very often a person who knew a fraction of what he knew. Very often, and he showed such great honor to any fellow teacher, any colleague, anybody, any person who was in the category of Havercha. And as students, as Talmidim in the yeshiva, it left a great impression upon us. It's one thing to learn about it in the Gemara and saying how Talmidei Chachamim omedim, zeh mipnei zeh. It's one level. It's one level of a cognitive awareness to study it. If you're privileged, it's much greater to see it. And when you see that, when you see that, Yihi chevod chavercha chaviv alecha kishalach v'al tehi noach l'chos, maintaining a certain level of calm, maintaining a certain level of repose, of a certain level of dignity, which was of course the essence of Rav Pam. Growing up in Brooklyn, I saw on many occasions great rabbis fulfilling this teaching, and I'm talking now about relatively early childhood memories. Maybe I wasn't a child, maybe I was a teenager. But I remember, for instance, in Borough Park, we lived in Bensonhurst, and the Borough Park was, I think, still it probably is, one of the largest religiously observant Torah Jewish communities in the world outside of Eretz Israel. May all the Jewish communities be blessed. May Borough Park be blessed. But I remember that there were two shuls or two minyanim right across the street from each other. One I think was called the Agudat Yisrael, and one was called the Svardish Shul. And both had significant numbers of people praying in them. I haven't been there recently, but I do hope that Baruch Hashem, all the minyanim are continuing. And they had two great religious leaders, two great scholars. If I'm not mistaken, I think the names were Rabbi Singer was Rabbi Singer was the Rav of the Svardish Shul, and Rabbi Elberg was the Rav of Agudat Yisrael. I hope I have the names correctly, but may Hashem bless their souls. And what impressed me, they both were experts in Torah. Each one had his or her derech in learning. His they both had tremendous derachim in analysis. Now, you know, there's a custom in almost all the Jewish communities in the world that on 2 Shabbatot a year, that's like the major derasha of the great rabbi. One is the Shabbat between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's called Shabbat Shuvah. Some communities it's called Shabbat Teshuvah or Shabbat Shuvah based on the Haftarah. The other is the Shabbat before Pesach called Shabbat Hagadol. And as a teenager, maybe I couldn't understand anything they were saying. Maybe I was a little bit, but how much did I understand them? They were great scholars. But you know what I loved? You know what taught me? They alternated years in terms of who would deliver the drasha. Let's say year number 1, Rav Singer would be giving the Shabbat Hagadol drasha in the Svardish Shul. All the members of the Agudat Yisrael from across the street would go over there, including the rabbi, including Rav Elberg. And the next year, let's say Rav Elberg would be giving the shiur. So you see, like the whole community. It was what?
What language did they use?
My guess is Yiddish. Maybe maybe in the latter years English. I don't want to say it's many years ago. I don't want to say. Especially if I'm being filled out. I don't remember. It left such an impression on me. Like you can say, I have to go listen to his speech, and here's that. I have my own Torah, and I have my own students, and my own. But that's the idea. That's a glimpse. And if you were privileged to see it, if you were privileged to experience it, so when you study Pirkei Avot, it's not something esoterically theoretical. Oh yeah, very nice. You see it, you experience it. When I was in Eretz Israel already, Baruch Hashem, when Henny Zichronah Levrach, after we came to Eretz Israel, it wasn't long after we arrived in Israel. There was a scene in Crown Heights. Which to me was the ultimate expression of Yehi Chavod Chavercha Chaviv Alecha Tishalach. You know that Rav Schneerson Zatzal, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, in Lubavitch, they till today, they have a very strong emphasis on celebrations of birthday. When the Rav was alive, so of course they celebrated the Rav's, the Rebbe's birthday, with many thousands of people participating in Crown Heights and Eastern Parkway, plus all the people that were watching it live on hookups all over the world.
They still celebrate it.
They still celebrate. I said yes. They still celebrate, and they would celebrate each year the anniversary of the date that the Rebbe became the leader of the community. I don't remember exactly which celebration it was. It was obviously a monumental one because it wasn't just a regular celebration. And what happened was that Rav Soloveitchik Zatzal, who of course was the spiritual leader of Yeshiva University, of the religious Zionists of America, tremendous philosopher, tremendous Talmudist, from Rav Chaim Soloveitchik's family. I mean, he's a great one of the great world leaders on Torah Bris. It was so fascinating. I'll tell you, I first read about it the next day in an Israeli newspaper. In a I don't know if there's such a thing as secular, but maybe if somebody wants to use that word, not in the religious newspaper. I think it was with all due respect, it was in one of the daily Israeli newspapers, and they wrote about Rav Soloveitchik participating in the Farbrengen of Rav Schneerson. And I was so excited, I had to see it, I had to hear it. I called everybody I knew, and I asked, I have relatives, Baruch Hashem, Hashem bless them, in Lubavitch, and I have relatives, friends in YU. What happened? And as may be known, Rabbi Soloveitchik and Rabbi Schneerson had a long time relationship from Berlin, from the university. One was studying, I think, maybe engineering. Engineering, engineering, and one was studying philosophy, and they were roommates at the university. Like wow! Now, when I read the article, and Rav Soloveitchik travels, I think it's probably surely more than an hour, maybe an hour and a half, I don't know, from the Bronx to Crown Heights, and he sits there.
That was in France. They were both in France where they were roommates together.
Could be but something from Berlin also. But what the story I'm telling is, the story I'm telling now is when there was a great observance and celebration in Crown Heights. Now, Rav Soloveitchik, with all due respect to Rav Schneerson, one of the great Torah leaders and teachers of the world, one of the most outstanding scholars that our generation had, of course, was Rav Schneerson. Rav Soloveitchik doesn't have to come and listen to the teachings of Rav Schneerson. He had, and he still had thousands and thousands of students listening to his own lectures. I was privileged. My Abba, Zatzal, he used to take me even as a young boy to go to Yeshiva University to listen to the drashot of Rav Soloveitchik. He also took us to listen to the Farbrengen of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. At that time, I think when I started going, it was easier for me to understand Rav Soloveitchik in a certain sense, only because I knew that the language was English. Not that I understood what he was saying, but at least I understood the language. And Rav Schneerson was teaching Yiddish. It was more difficult. It was even before the time I knew Yiddish. And he stood there, and the way he stood up for him. Subsequently, it's available on YouTube. We're talking on YouTube, right? So just look for it. I don't know exactly how to search, but you can look for. His name is Rav Schechter. It's similar to the name Rav Herschel Schechter, but not. This is Rav Herschel Schechter accompanied Rav Soloveitchik on his journey to Crown Heights, the 770 Eastern Parkway, and he tells about it. I I think you can look for it under the Rav and the Rebbe, or the Rebbe and the Rav, or something like this. And he talks about his experiences, you know, how the Lubavitcher Rebbe greeted Rav Soloveitch, as you know, as the closest of friends. And if you know how it worked there, and he put a chair next to his own chair at the head table, and he stood up for him. And Rav Shechter says, Rav Shechter, there were two Rav Herschel Shechter, so you shouldn't get confused which one I'm talking about. Or maybe is it Herschel? Is it Herschel? They're both. So he says, you know, and when we came, he said, I asked what he called the Rav. That was what he was referred to at certain points in the history of Yeshiva University. I asked the Rav. Maybe they pronounce it Rav. I don't know. I asked the Rav. I asked Rav Soloveitch, how long are we going to be staying? You know, a short while. And he was so enthralled with the teachings of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He stayed like an hour and a half, and there was such a warmth that the Israeli newspaper, was it Ma'ariv or Yediot Ahronot, wrote about, like, you know, two people that you don't have to be, you know, that well versed in the intricate details of the religious Jewish communities of the world to know that Lubavitch and YU are both great movements, and they both should be blessed. They're both on the highest levels, and each one they're not the same. Lubavitch is doing great work in Chabad all over the world. Yeshiva University has trained, you know, the greatest rabbanim and a combination of Torah and Madah, and yeah. But it's two different worlds, right? So maybe if your Chaveri is exactly like me, if you're a Lubavitcher Chassid and I'm a Lubavitcher Chassid, all right, Yehi Chavod Chavercha Chaviv Alecha Kishal. I'm in YU and you're in Lubavitch. I'm in Lubavitch and you're in Yeshiva University. I can respect you. I can show respect for you. Yes, the answer is yes. The answer is yes.
Well,
and when Rav Shechter, it's, I think, worth reading and listening to his analysis of what went on, because to me, I was 6,000 miles away. I started crying. When I read that article. I started crying when I read the article, because that's what it means. It means show honor. It doesn't mean you have to say exactly the same thing. If you follow the shiurim of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and you follow the shiurim of Rav Soloveitch, I'm sure that there are, you know, areas that they said similar teachings in. But they weren't always teaching the same way or the same thing. They weren't even coming to the same conclusions, and they weren't always leading the people the same way. That's not what it's about. This great kavod. I cried because I felt it was like a taste of a glorious existence, of a fulfillment of Yehi Chavod Chavercha Chaviv Alecha Kishalach.
I think you have to know one thing, that part of the education at YU, they want their students to experience Hasidic Shabbat.
Baruch Hashem.
You know, that's
I heard Reb Soloveitch quote often. He said that his first, I think what he calls him, his first Rebbe, his first teacher, I think he called him his Melamed, maybe pronounce it Melamed. His first Melamed was, I think, a Lubavitcher Chassid. And I'm sure it's not coincidental, but incidental. Whatever it is, that there was this, and Rav Shechter asked Rav Shechter asked Rav Soloveitch, I think, you know, there seems to be, you know, like a great closeness, or somebody asked the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I don't remember which one of them says. No, I think someone asked the Rebbe. I think it's someone asked the Rebbe. You know, you have such a you have a friendship with him. You have like because like in some people's minds, like two different worlds. They clearly separate. And I think Rabbi Shlomo Kalbach once said Mashiach wants to come, but you know there are forces in the world trying to stop Mashiach from coming. How do they stop? They put everybody in boxes. You have to be in a certain box. Which group do you belong to? Oh, you belong here. You belong here. And maybe Mashiach will come when we break down some of these barriers. So I think
out of the box.
What?
Think out of the box.
Out of the box, yeah. So I think they asked Rav Schneerson, "You really friendly with Rav Soloveitch?" And he said something like, you know, on a much deeper and greater level than you even understand. So that's what it means. That's what it means. Hi chavod chavercha chaviv alecha kishalach. I do hope that we can learn from these great luminaries. I'm sure there are many hundreds of thousands of examples. I'm sorry for selecting only 2 or 3. These are the ones that I saw and I experienced at some level. And I think that that's the key. If we follow the teaching of Rabbi Eliezer, then we're on the road to greatness, and may we be as sensitive to showing respect to others as much as we show respect to ourselves, even if that other is not exactly doing what we are doing, even if they're a little different. One of my favorite teachings in the name of Cook is that the house of Abraham and Sarah was open on all four directions. Anybody who's ever listened to me talk about that, I quote it all the time. So, I mean, some say it's to provide immediate access. You don't have to walk around. If somebody's tired, they're traveling in the desert, come in from the east wing, from the west wing, from the north wing, south. Rav Soloveitchik said it was open on all four sides. Rav Cook said it was open on all four sides because it means some homes are open only to the person that you agree. If you're coming from the same place as me, come in. I'm coming from the south, whatever south represents, conceptually. And you're coming from the south. Bakasha, please come into my tent. But I'm coming conceptually from the south, and you're coming conceptually from the north. I don't have room for you. Go to the other people. Go to the other ones, Yehi chavod chavercha chaviv alecha kishalach va'al tehi noach lechos. Thank you so much for listening. Shalom.